After posting the previously unheard of victims of Alex Murdaugh, a lot of us had the question, if they didn't pursue this, did they receive compensation? It's a good question, so let's get to the answer. In the process of looking for the answer, I did a deep dive into how much PMPED actually lost as a result of Alex's actions. The answer may surprise you. It sure did me. Let's get started. This is Legal Updates with Cassidy. How much did Alex cost PMPED? And did the 11 newly discovered victims get compensated? Welcome. After thinking about this question of whether or not these newly discovered victims were compensated, I remembered going through the paperwork for the receivership money that was filed back in October. At that time, I had been trying to match up the amounts in the paperwork with the known victims, and there were so many amounts that just didn't fit anywhere. I wondered why at the time, and I eventually gave up. But I woke up thinking about it, and I dug out my files, and happily, I was able to match every one of these 11 victims with the amounts in the ledger from PMPED. This means they were all compensated for their losses. Here we see each of their initials and the amounts stolen. Only victim JV didn't have stolen funds. In this person's case, only the fees were stolen from PMPED. But while I was at it, I wanted to take a deeper look at this ledger, because at the time, as I said, I couldn't make sense of it. So I just kind of discarded it for the moment. But let's look at this very bottom. It's divided into columns. And through these totals, we can find out just how much Alex cost the firm in total. The second column here is about the fees that Alex stole. It amounts to $1,499,172.01. The next column is the amount that had to be paid to Alex's clients who had had their funds stolen. This is a huge amount, coming in at $8,986,523.37. When you hear this number, you start to feel a little bit bad for them maybe. The next column, these are costs incurred by PMPED due to Alex's actions. The first one on the list is Alex's 2021 Chevrolet Suburban with the price tag of $70,306. Now there are two asterisks here, so if we look down, we see an explanation that says that the 2021 Chevrolet Suburban was purchased by the firm for Alex in December 2021. The vehicle has been seized by SLED since June 2021. Now come on, messy books still by PMPED, because if it was seized in June, and we know this date to be June 24th of 2021, how was it purchased for Alex in December 2021? So I'm assuming that it had to have been 2020 that they mean. December of 2020 it was purchased. And then it was seized, and apparently, at least at the time of this document, it has not been returned. But let's move on. Then we have his personal credit card charges, which were $17,236.52. The next amount he cost them was for case resolution payments. That comes to $372,821.63. Professional fees paid, now it doesn't give a description of what these kinds of fees were for or who they were paid to, but they come in at $2,078,025.05. Now I have a sneaking suspicion that this $2 million in professional fees is perhaps when the firm themselves had to inventory and go through all their books to find what Alex had stolen, and that they paid themselves heartily to carry this out, because we did hear in Nathan Tootin's testimony that he was in fact part of the crew that was sifting through the finances to discover Alex's thievery. If so, what a sneaky way to get yourself $2 million for something that you should have caught, I don't know, maybe back in 2005 when it first started happening. But here you go, $2 million for your hard work because you missed it for 16 years. Anyway, then we have miscellaneous expenses at $3,015.26 for a total of $2,524,167.94. Next, we have prejudgment interest. Prejudgment interest is the amount of interest the law provides to a plaintiff to compensate for the loss of the ability to use the funds. It's computed from the date on which each loss was incurred until the date in which the money is distributed. Now here, I really don't understand why it's been given to some clients but not others, especially the ones that have been waiting since 2005. When it comes to these 11 victims, it was only given to one of those. So I do not understand the method behind choosing who gets this interest and who doesn't. But these payments total $1,121,000. When we take all of these losses from the stolen fees to the money paid to clients to these costs that were incurred and the prejudgment interest, we come up with this huge amount. $14,130,863.32. Now, when we see this number, whether they deserved it or not, most of us think they did, it sounds like a crippling amount of money for this law firm. $14 million. But here is where it starts to change. How much of this over $14 million did PMPED actually carry? This second half is about credits. They were insured, so we have these insurance payments, and look how much they total. $5,350,000. So right off the bat, cuts it right down to $8,780,863.32. Still a lot of money, right? Well, let's go on. The next column is repayments to the firm. The $680,000 came from Palmetto State Bank when Russell started to panic and thought he could weasel himself out of being caught. The next number is familiar. This is the Ferris case. Remember, Alex put back the $600 and Chris Wilson paid in the $192,000, and then Alex never paid him back that money? So between these repayments, totaling $1,472,000, we now have a total of $7,308,863.32. So these total reductions, amounting to almost $7 million, bring this net loss to just over $7.3 million. Still a big number. Let's go on. This next column has an asterisk, which says, as of September 3rd, 21, Alex was not entitled to any additional compensation from PMPED because of his disloyalty and dishonesty. And we talked about this because Dick and Jim in their motion had said that Alex didn't owe that much because his fees would have covered several million. The government said no, he would not have been entitled to those fees, so those are a loss. And they were prepared to have Ronnie Crosby there to testify that this would have been the case. And this is exactly what they're saying. The amounts in this column reflect fees he may have been entitled to, but for his criminal, immoral, unethical, and disloyal, that's a lot of adjectives, conduct. So, Alex would have been eligible for $3,876,766.06 in lawyer's fees. But because he was fired for his egregious acts against his clients and the company, he had to forfeit these fees. So guess what? These fees go back into the budget. Now we're down to $3,432,097.26. So this represents the actual loss by PMPED. But there's more. Restitution was ordered by Corey and also Russell. And if we look at these three asterisks, it says restitution totaling $1,591,062.85 has been ordered payable to PMPED from U.S. v. Fleming and U.S. v. Lafitte. So we subtract that amount, and we're now down to $1,841,034.41. is the full amount of PMPED's loss. Now, I don't know if this is true, but if these professional fees that were paid within the firm itself for them to go through the books that they should have been keeping better track of in the first place, that $2 million is more than the actual loss. But if I'm wrong about that, which I very well could be, less than $2 million is their loss. Let that sink in for a moment. They have whined and cried about how much Alex cost them and how angry they are. But once they were bailed out by insurance, Palmetto State Bank, recouping Alex's fees, and payments from Corey and Russell, they're out less than $2 million, even though all of this thievery happened on their watch. When I saw this, I was outraged. Are you outraged? Let me know what you think about this in comments, because this is nuts. And then we consider, with Alex's remaining funds, barely over $2 million. No doubt that's much less since the referee stepped in to sort it all out, because this was the amount before the referee stepped in and did any work. We saw how many motions kept being filed that took up even more and more of that money. And then we see that the referee saw fit to award PMPED, now known as Parker Law Firm, 14%. 14% of whatever is left of this money that started off just over $2 million before the referee had to step in, before all these senseless motions were filed, taking up more and more of it, and Parker was awarded 14% of what's left. I don't like this at all. Mark Tinsley used the term unclean hands in his claim for Mallory's mom, and that expression is screaming in my head as I look at this. This law firm, as we've now learned, missed Alex's thievery from at least 2005 to 2021. This theft should have been plain to see by a watchful eye actually paying attention to the firm's money. How it was missed will remain as big a mystery as how Dick and Jim are being paid to represent Alex in case after case, or where this missing $6 million are. How was a check that was supposed to go to Randy, written to Alex, rewritten on Alex's request, and then both the original check and the second check cashed? No one noticed. How were fees being paid directly to Alex with no one noticing? How were amounts being lied about on disbursement sheets and no one caught it? Were there no checks and balances at all? How is this firm not being charged for taxes that couldn't have been paid at the time because the amounts were obviously not recorded as income to the firm? And how was the Parker Law Group, formerly PMPED, voted 2023 Business of the Year in Hampton? There are still so many questions left in this case, even as hearing after hearing is getting wrapped up. The more we dig, the more questions we find instead of more answers. But I will keep digging and letting you know what I find. Till next time, this is an enraged Cassidy O'Connell saying stay well and stay tuned.